Hello again.
Hi, Bonnie.
Hi. Well, we tried to stop, but then we kept on going, and so we're gonna keep on going. And I guess something that we just talked about, but that is always really interesting to me is when you're making a documentary, and I know this happens a lot with anything about any family, any story, the desire to stay truthful, and particularly maybe the desire to stay, um or what you're saying is to have something that actually can have a positive impact on people's lives. Maybe it's not as salacious a tale, and maybe it's not, it won't, yeah, like whatever, superficially do better in certain ways, but the ability and opportunity to do something that's like uplifting is sort of at the core of what these, I guess, what these alternative, like, what do you call them?
I mean, these particular, the Source family and Unarians in particular are healing communities. Like
They're healing
they're
communities.
healing groups. Like some people might call them healing cults. But for
Yeah.
me, they're intentional communities. They're alternative spiritual communities that are focused on healing, really, and healthy. You know,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think that that's super cool. I think, um yeah, the opportunity to make art, and that's something for me too, is like we went through a little spell of just being like, again, because I didn't grow up with the dichotomy of like God and Satan. Like, I just thought it was sort of like, um something not funny, but just like if it's not part of your culture, it is kind of funny to think that that is what's the ultimately at stake, is your eternity in heaven or your like eternity in damnation. And so we went through like a, um sort of satanic, not devil worship, but like a satanic spell, which I think is cool, and I learned a lot from, and but the,
What year was that?
like, 2016, 17, 18. And it was more just the idea that, um we too were against, personal freedoms being, you know taken away, and people being treated differently, just across the board. My biggest thing is that I don't understand how humans, and animals for that matter, but I really don't understand how humans have different value, and I just don't believe that and think that. And I think if people need to see like the devil to be reminded that, we're all the same, or or that in satanic, the satanic values are that everyone is equal, if that helps people to understand, then we did that. But now I don't feel comfortable. I don't like to be dark. I mean, I am inherently dark in certain ways. And little kids love it. Little kids like really love me and get so excited when they see me, and they're like, "Oh my God, that's a witch." And I'm like, now I'm kind of like, yeah, I guess I am. But yeah, I just feel like now I want to help people feel good, and I want them to feel safe. Um, and I don't want something like devil art to make certain people not feel welcome. But I guess, yeah, what you're saying about doing something uplifting, I think is so important, and like is something that maybe the church does more than other people. I'm not sure. Or maybe just things are uplifting for kids, or people don't take that stuff serious, but it's so serious, it's so important, and it's so essential. And I guess you're just saying that it's hard to just make art that's uplifting, not just uplifting, but that's one of the end results of it.
I mean, I feel like everything has a time and place, you
Yeah.
know, and there are things that I've gone through in my life that made so much sense, like in the 90s. They felt so right and good, and they were just part of like my own journey, spiritual journey. And then we're also on a cultural journey together, where certain things resonate in the culture at certain times, and then 10 years later they feel really dated and old.
Right.
And there was a time when like I was really into exploring Manson, Satan, all of those things. And I'm glad I did,
Yeah.
I wanted to lift the rock. Like I wanted to see what it was all about, because I didn't get any of that stuff growing up. I was protected from it and didn't have access to it. I only had those witch books in the library,
Yeah.
and whatever I could get. I didn't have the internet. I just had In Search Of, with like
Yeah.
Nimoy. And and anyway, I feel like it's you have to have an archdemon in order to have an archangel. You can't
Right.
have an archdemon without an archangel. And Uriel, for example, from Unarians, like, it's so interesting. But one of the key players in their psychodramas is this person, Vaughn, who ended up leading Unarians after her passing. And he sincerely believed that he had been Satan in a previous lifetime. And Napoleon Bonaparte and Nero,
Yeah.
and all of these characters. And I it's like the Source family too. They also, Father Yod would tell family members, like, we're all just actors on a stage. Like, we are souls playing these parts in this body right now, and that's another metaphysical concept. Unarians talked about that too. So what they were doing, in their psychodramas, like dressing up, so a lot of them played terrible people in the
Yeah.
psychodramas because Uriel was like, we don't need to relive the positive psychodramas. You've got all that healing in you already. We need to get to the stuff you need to heal. So
Yeah.
the Unarians psychodramas are really intense. Like, if you're actually looking at them and you understand that these are real people, sincerely reliving what they believe to be their other lifetime, is when they were like in the most decadent civilization in the universe of all time, the Orion civilization, where P.S. Tyrantus, the tyrant, and so it was controlled by a tyrant who controlled other people, who controlled others through mind control, technology, drugs, and religion. Like, it's so interesting. She was teaching people about the the decline and decadence of civilizations, basically this life cycle of
Yeah.
civilizations, in order to help people like heal their problems in this lifetime. It's just so fascinating.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, so you need the archdemon. I don't know, I mean, in Bali, they teach, if you want to learn magic in Bali, you have to learn the black magic first before you learn the white magic, which I think makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Then when you get to the white, you're like, oh, okay. That's how I felt when I went from one to the other. I was like, oh, this is
Totally.
sustainable. Oh, this feels good all the time. Oh, this is
Yeah.
healing. Oh, I can, I mean, I'm curious about you stopping drinking and why you did that and how that shifted for you.
Yeah. Well, it's weird is that I guess essentially I've been numbing myself my entire life. I started drugs and smoking and drinking like real young. And I think for a lot of reasons, but I think I'm super sensitive and I didn't know what that meant before. Like I didn't know what anything meant. I just numbed it. And now I guess I'll just tell you is in 2020 I got sick for like 6 months and I had a fever and they couldn't figure out what it was. I was going to like different infectious disease doctors, like kidney doctor. I took a medicine that made me pee green for like 4 months, and they're like, you need surgery, you need this, and
God.
none of the doctors could agree, but it also just didn't feel right. And I just honestly took some plant medicine and the instantly like had some experiences, and the fever just like didn't go away permanently, but it went away that day for the first time in 5 months. And I could physically feel that I was storing trauma. I was storing the stories that I didn't tell, was storing other people's pain. If someone had pain, and my bandmates can attest to this, is that if somebody around me was experiencing pain, I thought my job was to grab it from them and put it, stuff it in me and not allow them to go through it. Just because I didn't want to be around it, I guess. It was selfish. But so I had just been storing all of this stuff, and yeah, and I just took this medicine, and I looked at, I had all these bottles of medicine. I looked at them and I was like, no, and I threw them away. And then, yeah, and then it was just like, I just started like looking at like diet, which is like, none of the doctors asked me what I was eating, what I was, nothing.
I mean,
Yeah, not one. And it's like, they're saying, you know, getting every test, every single thing, saying, oh, I see something on your thyroid. I see something on your, it looks like you had, one said I had tuberculosis. Like, I'm talking, and this was all in like high COVID. So it was just real, you know, it would have been a real obvious time to be like, how's your stress levels? How's your whatever? But I didn't know what it meant that you could make yourself sick. I kind of knew, say like cancer could do that, or you could get cancer, certain things, but I didn't know you could physically manifest your problems. And so that became, that happened. And then there was one, just being really clean, eating really clean, making my own food, maybe going too far of that, like scared of food, but I just had to see. And then it just, for some reason, alcohol makes me physically sick now. Just like if I have more than like a sip of it, I become physically ill, which is just, yeah. And I went, our like healer lady who just helps you heal yourself, Laura Ellis, she's been on this podcast. She's the best ever. But yeah, she said that that's not too like atypical for someone that's going through something like this. It's just certain things just won't like work in your body any longer. But yeah, that it's like all these things that really helped me. All the things, it's just, once you say, I want to be completely connected to my guides, I want to be all of this stuff, I want to be super sensitive, I want to be super psychic. It's like, okay, but what you're really saying is you're like, if you want that, you're going to also have to say goodbye to a lot of easy coping mechanisms. Like, you know, it just, I just had to say goodbye to a different way of that, or the way that I used to know how to numb and dull now doesn't work anymore. I feel it. And so that's kind of what happened with drinking. And
huge. Congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, I wish it was like, I kind of feel guilty because it's not like I made it's the right choice. And I'm like, I thought I didn't have a problem because I only drank when we played. But I only went out when we played. So it turns out if I went out, I had to drink, you know, so it's just like, you don't see things when it's happening. But yeah, it's just like, I feel like because I physically can't do it, that I'm not really doing anything. But what I've learned over the last like 5 months of not doing it is really incredible. Like not something I ever, and just to, is that emotions and feelings are like clouds, they pass. And it's like our people are so hell-bent on avoiding discomfort that they don't realize it's like, one, it passes so much faster than you think, and two, that avoiding it takes up so much more time and energy than just letting it pass. But you know, I didn't know that.
You would have been a perfect candidate for the Source family or Unarians, because I mean, a number of people that I met in both of those groups were people who were sensitive. I mean, that's the thing, like our world, you know, our contemporary materialist, hyper materialist, you know, hyper tech obsessed world, you know, forgets like that we are the most technologically advanced instruments in the world as human beings. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We have these abilities that we are not even tapping into culturally, that are shunned or they're made fun of because they're largely misunderstood. You know, these sensitivities, when you can actually feel someone else's issues, you can actually feel them when they're next to you. Not everybody has that ability, but a lot of people do. I've been a magnet to these people all my
Yeah,
life.
I'm sorry.
No, it's great.
It's-
It's incredible. I've lived such a privileged and charmed life because I've for some reason been like a magnet to these people who have taught me so much about these states. And what I found with like the Source family and Unarius, well, also my shaman friend Lady Hawk, who I met when I was living up in Port Townsend, up in like 2008, both told me, because I was, just, unaware of the impacts of like alcohol, cigarettes, drugs,
yeah,
energy body back then, but to
yeah,
learn about what the energy body is, and then learn about, like, I don't know if your healer talked to you about this, but Unarius talked to their students about this because Uriel was a clairvoyant. So she had like a shamanistic view. She could see energy, all that stuff. And I truly believe that she had that capacity, and her husband did too, because I've known multiple people like that. So it's not a
yeah,
far. In fact, like when you know multiple people like that, you're like, oh, certain people have different access, certain people have different levels of access, then they've got different styles of how they
right,
share it with others,
right.
and then
Well,
they're all human, so they can screw it up if their ego gets in the way. It's always the battle of like keeping your ego back. You got to be doing it for the greater good, for this sort of healing stuff to work.
yeah.
But
Well,
yeah.
oh
Oh,
no,
God,
please go
I say
ahead.
that, but with Unarius and with my shaman friend Lady Hawk, this is when I first, with Lady Hawk, I first learned the concept of like because I smoked a lot of pot, in the 90s when I was with all my band people and everything. I don't now,
Yeah,
but I loved it for years.
yeah,
All of a sudden it wasn't fun anymore. I was like,
yeah,
annoyed, and you hear that all the time, right? Where people get
yeah.
rage and they're like, I'm starting to get paranoid. It's not fun. Well, I got the first explanation for that made sense, which was Lady Hawk was like, you have to understand when you do drugs and, even smoking pot, alcohol, your energy body expands. So that feeling you feel when you're high or when you're drunk is like your aura. It's like your energy body getting bigger and expanding. And if you drink enough or smoke enough pot, or smoke enough cigarettes, even your energy body starts getting porous. It starts becoming like
Oh, wow.
and you can attract these like thought forms, entities. You can pick up stragglers,
Totally.
that are just like, and this is again, this is a leap for a lot of people to even think about, like, but thought forms floating around in the atmosphere, or spirits, of
Well,
people who have passed that are unground, that are not, they're kind of like stuck in the ethers a little bit, that
yeah,
maybe drank a lot in their previous lifetime and they're feeding off of your alcohol.
totally.
That's why like clairvoyants I know don't go to parties or they don't go to bars, because they can see too many. It's spirits,
Yeah,
alcohol is called spirits for a reason,
yeah,
is in spirit. So when I learned that, I was like, oh my God, that makes so much sense, because I was smoking enough pot that like my energy body was just getting porous, and I was starting
totally.
up these thoughts, and it really helped me get my little niece to stop smoking too. I was like, do you understand, when you smoke cigarettes, all these subastral entities are like, like when you think about that, you're like, oh, that's better than,
That's
that
amazing though.
that's a
Yeah,
good motivator to like get those things away.
that's
What
awesome. Yeah, no, I mean, we've had definitely several events or occurrences with like darker forces, darker things. I don't know what, like but when people have, they also seem to know if you're drunk, I've noticed, and be able to, yeah, like cling on to you or affect you or do something. Like we've had a few like possessions is the only way I could put it, where somebody just wasn't themselves. And I think it's, yeah,
I've
these
experienced
entities,
that.
yeah, that they
My
just used to,
ex-husband. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, they just loved whatever they are. They loved in their last life drinking, smoking, doing all this stuff, and they just find someone that's drunk, hop on in for a little bit. And that, that has happened a couple of times in the bands where it's like, it's never happened to someone that wasn't drinking, like,
I mean, I agree. And that's the thing. Like when I started learning about this stuff, I learned about, I started getting into understanding like other dimensional stuff when I had to because of someone. I can't even get into it.
I'm
But
sorry.
no, so it's all good. I mean, that's the other thing. Like, I'm not the victim type, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm not really into
I
that
understand, but
identification. I learned from it and I grew
yeah,
from it. I got stronger from it. And now I'm just like chuckle at it.
yeah, good.
Oh, this black magician who thought
Yeah.
he was so powerful till my friend's mom, who is a clairvoyant, like went to, found him in the astral realm and was like, and he engaged in a psychic battle with her. And she was like, oh my God, it was like a 5-year-old throwing a snowball. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
that's the thing when you can find these like usually wise women, who are like shamans or healers, like somebody's, your best friend's mom. It's
yeah,
different than when you're just calling somebody up in the yellow pages. Like you've got
yeah,
context.
yeah,
Anyway, that helped me. That helped lead me on a path toward healing and like journey toward who am I? What am I doing? Why am I here? And that's the thing. Like once you understand magic, like once you actually experience it and understand it, it becomes the black magic for me becomes less alluring. It's like
right.
it's just the spiritual equivalent of people doing shitty things to each other in the material world.
Yeah,
I don't want to hang out with people like that. Like,
yeah,
especially not now. I don't have time for that.
yeah,
It's like once you have it, once you understand that you've got this ability and this power, like what are you going to do with it? Like that's the big question. Are you going to use it to like enrich yourself, empower yourself? Are you going to use it to like hurt other people who you think did you wrong? Or are you
yeah.
gonna use it for like the greater good or to understand yourself, on a
Well,
deeper level?
totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think people also don't realize like the dichotomy or the power of like duality at once. It's like you have the power to be both, but how much cooler is it to do good? And it's like it just I don't think people think about that. And the dark stuff is pretty like cool looking, but it's like
It's like so uncool now because you see it every day in the headlines. Like
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah,
dark, like that's the stuff that's the stuff that's wrecking our culture right now. Like
yeah,
why even but I also understand that when you're younger, like I went through a period where that was really attractive and sometimes
yeah.
you move through all those versions of reality to like get to a place that feels authentic, to you.
Yeah, well, I think people don't know their power. I think that's a place to start. Like to prove you have power is, I think, dark, like, or enhances darkness, or is easier to use darkness. And then when you find your power, you find it's kind of light. But one thing you said before, and one thing I want to talk about that I think is so cool is like when you and your friends or you and these people or in these groups like Unarians and Source Family, it's like when you get a bunch of people together that are like they're one of their main things they would say top 3 things is like trying to grow, like every day trying to grow, trying to learn, trying to heal. Like you get a lot of supernatural occurrences and lots of synchronicities and
Yeah.
so much evidence that there's something beyond you. And almost goofily, if that's a word, but like when we're together, it's I
Did you
mean
say goofily? Like goofily?
yeah, is that a
That's
word?
funny. Oh my God. I mean, that's like Unarius and Father Yod both were like, the universe has a great sense of humor.
Yeah, well, it's just funny
Yeah.
because you're like everything it becomes a joke for sure. And it's goofy the way that like every numbers or receipts will always be something, or just everything is everything always is the way that we like to describe it. But I guess that's a part that maybe doesn't come through in some of the stories about these groups, is that it's not just like, because they like to make it a lot about a wounded person didn't get something in their family,
That's,
obviously going to the older
yeah.
man who they have father whatever. It's like it's not so obvious. It's
It's simplistic. People really see in it, I think, often a reflection of their own whatever
right,
limitations,
right. Y-
issues. It's often and that's what's so interesting about the Source family, is that it is kind of a Rorschach test
Yeah, right.
where people see it and have completely different takes on it, depending on who they are and where they're at in their life. I think, and I feel like I made it at a certain stage of life where I did my best with it for where I was at that life, at that time in life. But I've learned so
Yeah.
since then. I've learned so much more about the Source family and the complexity of it since then. And that's why I'm so grateful we got the opportunity to do the scrapbook,
Yeah.
write a new essay, and we could write captions, because the story of the Source family is so much bigger than the documentary. And there were things
Right.
that like we didn't have time to tell that were huge, which was like the Source family essentially became a matriarchy with a passive patriarch leader, when Father Yod had his multiple women. So you can look at it and be like, oh, he had multiple women and that was so terrible. And truth be told, many people in the group say that's when things started kind of going south, like it was a beautiful experiment until that happened because of the jealousies, and it divided people. But when there was like couples together, it was a seriously like powerful group where there were so many good things and still wild things and crazy things happening.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Father Yod gave those women power and let them kind of run the family, a few of them especially. And so most people don't get that, and they wouldn't, and
Yeah.
I didn't really know it when I was like doing the film, but like the scrapbook, goes more into like stuff like that, and the really deep, heavy stuff that we didn't get into too, for certain things that happened.
Okay.
I'll leave that a mystery, but
Okay, cool.
just a lot more stories. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. I feel like also just, I don't know, as a as a fan and a watcher, it's like as much as I've changed, as the many times I've watched it and seen it in so many different ways, I guess, yeah, I can't imagine being part of the making of something like that and changing with it too. Do you think, and I don't mean it for this experience, but do you think it matters if you agree with the sort of, like, it seems like the type of documentaries you work on are things that you typically think are helpful and are, and aren't like way out of like the realm of reality or whatever, or maybe, like, do you think it would be difficult to work on something where you're like, this doesn't make any sense?
I mean, for me, I am fascinated. I'm not a typical documentary filmmaker, first of all. Like a lot of documentary filmmakers, they do one project after another. They try to do a project in a year or two, you know what I mean, or a few years at the most or whatever. But for me, both of these projects were 7-year journeys. And I feel like I both projects were deep spiritual experiences for me.
Okay.
It was much deeper than me just being a documentary filmmaker and wanting to like be a filmmaker and tell a story. Like I had to tell these stories.
Right. Yeah.
They affected me so deeply. Like I can't even tell you like how deep it goes with these groups, and like,
Yeah.
but I'm also, aware that like, yeah, it's interesting because I feel like Alejandro Jodorowsky talks about that with his
Yeah.
work. Like I did an interview with him once for Flaunt magazine.
That's so cool.
My God, it was like he's the total hero for me personally. He's
Yeah.
inspired me, and I love that he's such a healer as well. Like who's also gone to transgressive places, but has
Yeah.
ended up with this like very powerful kind of integrated vision that brings it all together to a transcendent place, to a
Yeah.
place of new discovery. There's still a sense of wonder and mystery in everything he
So
does.
cool.
But he was saying for him, his films are like a footprint in the sand, like they're just like a footprint of a lot of different experiences. Like for him,
Yeah.
it's about the journey. And for me, it's a little bit more than that, because I feel a major responsibility to the groups that I'm working with, because it's somebody else's story.
Right.
Oh, and I want to be true to the people I'm working with. I'm not the kind of filmmaker who would do a film on Nexium, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Dance. And like, I don't want to do a film on an organization that, or a group that is just so corrupt and damaging. Like,
Right.
it's not my interest. I got through that like in the 90s, you know what I mean?
Right.
I
Yeah.
was interested for a time, and then I'm like, nah, I'm more interested.
Yeah.
This stuff is like really, for me personally,
Yeah.
like turns me on, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
there's so much to it, and it hasn't been told, you know what I mean? Like, it's just stories that haven't been told, that have an opportunity to show people in our culture who are really practicing these sort of like regenerative ideas that are healing for our world, you know? So anyway, that's the thing. Like, for me, I'm just trying to catch up. I find with Unarians, I'm so grateful that I've had, you know, I had like the last 2 years to sort of slow down a little bit,
Yeah.
figure out like what I wanted to like remove in my own persona, to like grow as a human being, to be able to really see the material clearly. You know,
Yeah.
that's always my biggest concern, is I don't want to limit the material with my own consciousness
Right.
at the time. So that's why with the Source family, especially, I want to do, I want to work with subject material that I respect,
Right.
always show that respect, and but also show the humanity and keep it somewhat balanced, you know. That's what I want to do, because I've noticed before with other filmmakers and also authors of books, like you can tell when an author or a filmmaker is really limiting the work because of their own personal limitations, you know,
Yeah.
especially in the
Yeah.
spiritual realm. Because you
Right.
know, with most films I see on cultic groups, I'm just like, you can just tell that this person thinks, you know, it's the typical thing, you know, where
Yeah.
these sort of like intellectuals feel like, oh, I know what's going on here. They spend 6 months exploring the material. They're like, oh, I know what's going on. It's a power corrupts thing.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
going to make it, because that's the easiest top layer if you're a materialist or a skeptic, to just go right to that place, you know. But I've found with all the groups I've gotten to know that that's never the dominant experience for the people involved, and the experiences are way richer and deeper,
Yeah.
more inspiring, you know, at a time
Yeah.
when I need it.
Totally. That's so cool. Is there any like, or did you know, because the Source family, you explained how you got into that, but did you know you were about to step off into the Unarian world when you did, like for 7 years, or?
Gosh, well, you know what happened is, I mean, I knew about their stuff in the 90s, right? And then I saw more of their films when I was married to Adam Parfrey, you know. And what's really interesting is Adam actually wrote a story about Unarius that was kind of a hit piece. It
Oh, dang.
was a very jaundiced-eyed view in Adam's style, that he printed in the San Diego Reader, and that was also in his book called Rapture. And I remembered when I was like dating him, I was in love with him. I actually read that piece for the first time, and I was like, oh my God, this is like terrible. Like,
Yeah.
this is so lame. I know this
Yeah.
group is more interesting, and
Yeah.
this feels like such a limited view of this group. And it's, you know, I mean, it was brilliantly written from that sort of perspective, you know.
Yeah.
I wanted to go further with it. And so that planted a seed for me like in 2004.
Okay.
And then what happened was in 2014, I got invited to co-curate an exhibition at a national museum called the American Visionary Art Museum, which is the first national museum dedicated to visionary art,
Cool.
artists. It's an amazing museum. I highly recommend.
Cool.
So they're founded by this incredible visionary, Rebecca Hofberger, who is totally a fairy godmother. She is like
Cool.
in a lot of ways, but like ran a museum. She invited me to co-curate this show called The Visionary Experience. And I
That's
was
so
like,
cool.
yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, I want to put Unarians in there. I've got to put them in there. So I contacted them to see if I could come look at their archive. And they were so friendly and nice, and they invited me down, and I went into their archive. I thought, oh, maybe they made a few movies. I didn't really know what was going to be in there, but I just knew about their films,
Yeah.
playing on public access. So I didn't even know all the films. I just knew a few.
Yeah.
In there, they took me into their film lab, and I just saw like walls and walls of videotapes. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh, I found out that they made 3 feature films on film,
Okay. Wow.
and they made over 100 television shows that
God.
aired repeatedly for years in up to 30 states in the United States.
Wow, that's so cool.
I had no idea. I thought it
Yeah.
was like just in LA, maybe
Yeah.
in New York. I knew about New York collectors. Like there were definitely musicians and filmmakers who knew about their stuff there, but I had no idea. And then they took me into their photo room, and they had like probably over 5,000 color images of like them in these like outrageously elaborate costumes,
Was so
so
cool.
colorful. Like there was just so much effort. Well, I shouldn't even say effort, because they're all channeling the Space Brothers. Like that's and
Yeah.
that's the amazing thing, is all of this art. So there was, okay, 5,000 images, there were hundreds of tapes, but all these TV shows and movies. And then they had hundreds of audio tapes that they made. And then they had 200 books that they had self-published.
Oh
I
my
had no
God.
idea, 200 books.
That
And
is so cool.
then they had all these paintings, all of these paintings. And they were describing to me that Uriel, part of their spiritual practice at Unarius was, Uriel was teaching people basically to get in touch with their higher selves and their guides. You know what I'm saying? But she
Yes.
taught from the Space Brothers. So like, it wasn't just your ancestors or, your closest team, which is what a lot of, people like yourself know about. Most people don't know about that, but, a lot of psychics do, a lot of clairvoyant and sensitive people do. But what she was saying, and what she and Ernest Norman were teaching, was that you can actually access these other dimensional beings who are benevolent and advanced to help heal you and help inspire your greatest ideas. And she insisted that all of the greatest works of art in humanity were created by people who were consciously or unconsciously channeling these higher energies, which, makes a lot of sense in a lot of ways. Because for me, coming from, I came from this background where I visited a lot of self-taught artists in the South when I was in college, like Howard Finster and Mose Tolliver, and a lot of artists back then. So I saw that those people, like most, like Howard Finster especially, was, I feel now, I mean, a lot of people may not know who he is, but his work hangs in the White House, it hangs in the Smithsonian. But he was like a former Baptist minister with a 6th grade education, who was a bicycle repairman, who was creating these amazing works of art with like, everything from Elvis to UFOs to angels and things like that. And so I was like, oh my gosh, like I put 2 and 2 together. I was like, Unarius is almost like an outsider art collective.
Yeah. Amazing.
And Uriel was like, she's sort of like, it's like the comparisons between her and Warhol, I can't help but make, because I feel like Uriel was doing almost like this West Coast like factory scene, but instead of like, her being concerned, interested in people with money, doing like gorgeous people, fame, being obsessed with fame and money. She was not interested in that. She was interested in healing. She was interested in these like,
so cool.
She was interested in reaching out to Albert Einstein through the ether. She wanted to hear from Tesla what his ideas were.
Yes.
She wanted to bring that forward to help heal people and help them grow. And so I was just like blown away when I saw the archive. And I feel like ever since then, I started shooting them in like 2015. And it's been, a 7-year journey. And I feel like ever since then, I've just been kind of catching up, and deprogramming myself. This is what I love about Unarius with their psychodramas too.
Yeah.
As I mentioned before, like, she would have the students really, they would all make their own costumes. She'd be
Yeah.
like, I'm feeling our time in Lemuria together. The cycle's coming through because of like maybe a tension that would be happening with different students or her and a student, whatever. Like it's coming through. I want you guys to all like go into your corners, figure out who you were. This is who I was during that time. Figure out who you were, make your costumes. Let's put the makeup on. Let's build the sets. And we're gonna get to the nitty gritty of that life,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's pretty
I
wild.
mean, that makes perfect sense to me. I think I need your documentary, but I also need to know more about them, because like I feel like just whatever side note is like the way that I make music or whatever is like I channel it all. Like I spend like a month without listening to anything and just going on walks, and then like I used to didn't bring a phone around, so I'd have to like borrow someone's phone on the street and like send myself a voicemail.
Oh my God, that's exactly what I did when I was working on this film. I would
Yeah,
get
cool.
it happened during walks. I'd be like, it would just come in.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how I write. But I it's like so interesting to me that other people like when you do that with other people, it's just like, sorry, the dog was tapping my chair. But when you do with other people, it's so much, it's faster, and I love speed.
This is the thing. Well, this is the thing that can give us all hope for the future.
Yeah.
You get together with a group of like-minded people and you share a vision together that is greater than yourself, that involves healing, that involves growth and creativity, like making stuff. Like to me, that's how you change the world. Like that is how the most powerful movements are formed. When people, when like-minded people come together and want to do something good together to help move things forward and heal. And that is way more powerful, Uriel said. And I believe forces of darkness, which are just, fallen angels and fallen souls who are like off the path, screwing up their karma. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I just love her perspective on that. Like her perspective was, the future of planet Earth is positive, that love is the greatest power in the universe. And just keeping those things in mind, that's the thing. People came into Unarians. Some people came in just because they were actually psychic and really interested in metaphysical concepts, and had a structure, like people who, Kevin, for example, he's one of the lead characters in the documentary, and he's the head of the film department at Unarius now. Like he was astral traveling when he was 8 years old, but he told his parents and they were just like, they shut it down so rapidly because most people don't understand that. They're like, oh my gosh, my kid's crazy. Don't talk about that stuff. But when you get to a group like this, where there's not only an understanding of it, but they've got a lesson plan. You discipline to help you grow your abilities in like a structured, safe way. It's totally amazing. So you had people like that, but then you had a lot of, Kevin was also like doing tons of drugs when he came in. He was a total partier. He was smoking pot all the time. And you had people with real mental issues who came in there.
Yeah.
And what Diana Taminia told me, she was a participant observer with Unarius for 10 years and wrote this amazing book for Oxford University Press. She's also a subject in the documentary. She describes Unarius as a folk healing group.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. So these folk healing groups, they exist throughout the world. And, there are folk healers who are shamans. You can call them folk healers if you want. They're not licensed by the AMA.
Yeah.
Approved that you've got risks coming in, but that's the thing, like Unarius provided, especially for working class people. That's what I love about this film too, is it wasn't just sort of like privileged, like people coming together and just becoming self-obsessed with new age concepts. It was people with real issues who didn't have a lot of money and weren't interested in money, coming together to make amazing art.
It's so cool. I mean, it's the coolest art. I love it so much. But I guess since you bring it up, like, what do you think, like, what is it called? What percentage of people, I mean, not what percentage of people are mentally ill, because I think that that could be anyone, but what percentage do you think like could be mentally ill? I don't even know what I'm asking. I guess I was just gonna say
You're
what percentage.
asking this because I'm still editing the film right now. and
Okay.
it's making me think maybe I should clarify that, because that's the thing. Like, it's easy to think that, people who join these groups are just lost or screwed up, but that's not the case. I mean,
No,
most of them are very, like, just curious about the
well,
world,
totally.
and sensitive. Like, they just have abilities other people don't understand.
Well, we're considered to be mentally ill when we're sensitive. It's like, I will just say it's not an illness. It's just like, we're not taught to be, we're taught to fight with ourselves to be something else. That's if that doesn't make you mentally ill, I don't know what is. But I'm just curious because for almost a lot of these thoughts, I went to the loony bin when I was a kid for many of these thoughts and many, yeah.
Gosh, that's so I appreciate you sharing that. And I
Oh
bet a
yeah.
lot of people will appreciate you sharing that, because I know people who went to the loony bin for that too.
Yeah. And
Having
it,
like some sort of a, visionary experience that was just considered a delusion or whatever. And
right.
there's no place to put it for years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was like one of the, what's it called? Like, it's just one of the first kind of where they like test drugs on kids, kind of like 90s people. And but it was
Like mood altering drugs, like psycho behavior.
it's like lithium and like, yeah, like antipsychotics, but it was,
Wow.
and I mean, it makes sense because it's like, it's just funny because all of the questions that you're asked is like, do you believe in magical thinking? And magical thinking, it's like, yes,
Okay.
I do, sir. And it's just like all of the things that, it's just such a fine line between what you're allowed to say and not allowed to say. And I think what matters is your safety. If you're safe, if people around you are safe, then that's okay. And I don't think I was safe at the time. I was very confused. But like a lot of these thinking and a lot of these ideas of, can you control, yeah, basically, is magic real? And it's like, yeah, it is. I'm not crazy though. I didn't invent magic, but
I mean, and it's such a problem and challenge right now in the world, because, politically we're just so polarized,
yeah.
by, materialists who think that science will save the world. And then, people on the far other end who, believe that other things that, are super far out might save the world, who know, and who,
Yeah.
like, there's a big spectrum in the middle there, but it's interesting, because for me, what I find is, some people can try to tie magical thinking and, people having visions that don't come to pass as being totally delusional and dangerous and leading us to QAnon and Trump and things like that. And what I find is that for the people I've met who have other abilities and insight and are on a magical, like, intuitive path, like, they're some of the most like level-headed, well-adjusted people I know who are able to find a way to live functionally in a very dysfunctional world.
Yeah, totally. That's a good way to put it.
Part of that is because these metaphysical ideas they urge you to take personal responsibility,
Yeah.
self, and to learn who you are and explore yourself and your traumas,
Yeah.
and in a world that is just one trauma after another right now,
Yeah.
the ability to talk about traumas and talk about ways of working through them, it's just valuable. And however you do it, I respect it.
Yeah, cool. Well, I guess one other thing I'm just curious about is that in other cultures like the schizophrenic or that sort of state, a psychotic state, is perceived as a religious or a spiritual state, where you're being, like in in some countries, like they don't mess with you, like they allow you to go on that path. Like here, it's just not like that. I wonder if you know anything about that, or other cultures, or if that's something you're interested in.
Absolute interest of mine, and I would love to explore it further, but of course, just thinking like, I mean, I just have barely touched the surface of that. But when you think about like sadhus in India, you think about like shamans in USSR or whatever you call that land.
Yeah. I don't know.
Like that, that come from that part of the world, where they have, people come forward. A lot of indigenous cultures, let's just say many indigenous cultures throughout the world, have very different ways of handling people who hear voices, who
Yeah.
spirits, because they're more integrated with their spiritual selves. I believe it's because they're not as far removed from their spiritual selves as we are, because we live in such a hyper materialistic society that of course goes through waves of spiritual trends and
Yeah.
yearnings, which also
Yeah.
goes with like, here's the thing, like when you're, it's the 90s or something, and everybody's got tons of money, like neoliberal,
Yeah.
money is like flowing in at its peak, you don't have the desire necessarily to like get spiritual. But when things get really rough and people lose a lot of things, you lose loved ones, you lose money, then these things become more valuable, and we've just lived a privileged life for a long time, which has led to this hyper materialistic state. Uriel commented on that a lot too. But yeah, these indigenous communities, it's just fascinating how they embrace, or just have a deeper layer of respect and understanding and compassion too, for individuals who are having, I don't know what it is. It's not like every person hearing voices as a shaman, it's complex. Like it could be a lot of things. And I don't think anyone has a monopoly on what that is,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's interesting to me to learn about indigenous cultures who find other ways of helping that person become functional without drugs.
Right. Yeah. That's super interesting to me too.
Yeah.
It's like, these sound like really great outlets for those voices, those ideas. And yeah, if it weren't muted and numbed, they might find more people that like agree with them, or not agree, but
Yeah.
feel the same, or hearing the same things. Like it might not,
I also want to say though, like, I do feel like, I mean, I do also feel like that, like psychiatric drugs save lives, as
yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Definitely a place for them.
Yeah, I take
You know,
psychiatric drugs still, for sure.
I mean, that's the thing. Like they change so many people's lives in
Yeah, yeah.
positive ways, that I would never want to. I want to be really crystal clear about
Thank
that.
you for doing that. I appreciate that. This
Important,
is
it's just there's so many. That's the beauty too of the last 2 years. I feel like so many of these previously held beliefs that we've had about like health and what our value as human beings and what we have to do to have a meaningful life, all that stuff's just kind of like been blown to pieces.
yeah.
And it's just nice to have discussions about
Yeah.
new ways of wrapping our arms around these things, that are age-old questions.
Yeah. Well, that's so cool. Well, you didn't say it last time, but what is happening this weekend?
Oh, or next weekend, I want to say on November 12th, I'm going to be heading up to upstate New York, up in the woods, where a lot of
Cool.
workers have migrated to over the last couple of years, to this amazing theater called Upstate Films. They've got a
Cool.
theater in Saugerties and one in Rhinebeck.
Okay, I've been in Saugerties before.
Oh, you have?
Yeah,
That's
my old
cool.
band, we recorded our first record in a barn up there.
No way.
Yeah, I love it up there.
Gosh, well, my friend Paul Sturts, who is he's another, speaking of visionaries, he's like one of the visionaries behind the True False Film Festival, which if you love documentaries, you should absolutely try to go to at some point.
Okay.
I think it's my favorite documentary film festival in the
Oh,
country.
cool.
A lot of directors of other film festivals who feel that way. They just love it. And he's
Okay.
one of the founders of that, but he recently moved up to Rhinebeck and Socrates, and he's running this film, these theaters with a friend. And I'm going to be showing a doubleheader program. We're going to be showing
Woohoo.
Mars Family. I'm going to be signing copies of the scrapbook that I did with my partners with Isis Aquarian
So
and
cool.
Charlie Kitchings, who couldn't have made it without them, obviously. And then I'm going to do a special program of Unarians, like
Cool.
rarities that I dug up from the archive in the process of the documentary. And then we're going to show one of their psychodramas from
So cool.
the Orion Empire series.
Amazing. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for talking to me. I am so thankful for everything you do, and I can't wait to see more, and I can't wait to talk to you more.
My gosh, thank you so much for having me on. I so much appreciate what you're doing and love your music. And I'm just
Thank
thrilled,
you.
very grateful to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll see you later.
Ani, bye-bye.
Bye.